Hello, new student affairs professionals. My name is Dr. Ijama Nwogu. Thank you so much for joining in on this presentation where we will be talking about avoiding common mistakes made by new student affairs professionals. So why this topic? The reason why I chose to create a presentation around this topic is because I reflect on my own previous experiences as a new student affairs professional. And I wish I had a session like this that offered me critical insights that I needed to handle certain situations or to shape my mindset to simply be more effective in my efforts at the time. So my goal here is to really offer this access that I would have benefited from during my first year or two as a professional. So as you are aware, you've had the paraprofessional and pre-professional experiences, but hold limited full-time professional experience. So it becomes very imperative to acquire this information in order to prepare for more thriving pursuits as a new professional. Also, some issues that I've identified regarding new professionals is that all too often, many go about their work practicing poor habits and aren't sowing important seeds that are needed to really set themselves up for future success in their careers. Also, new professionals can experience challenges with managing their responses to difficult situations and navigating their interactions with individuals different from themselves. Also, new professionals may even struggle with keeping focused on perhaps the grand scheme of things, if you will, as there is a common tendency to really get caught up in tasks that appear urgent or important. Also, many new professionals enter their work with unrealistic expectations, and many really struggle with self-efficacy issues. So this topic is important because without addressing these factors, new student affairs professionals will run the risk of experiencing a variety of undesirable things, which can include perhaps jeopardizing your employment and upward mobility and harming work relationships and affecting your job effectiveness and efficiency, and most importantly, your personal wellness. So my desired outcome for you all is to really become better prepared to achieve greater success in your roles. Therefore, the purpose is to simply offer you all insights that will refine the ways in which you think about your upcoming or current work experiences, and secondly, to simply share information and strategic tools that you'll need to manage your work experiences at optimal levels. So to introduce the content of this workshop, I'd like to describe to you how I gather the information I'll be sharing with you. So what I did was pose a question to tens of thousands of student affairs professionals, inviting them to share feedback for new professionals in the field. So I was pretty shocked to receive an overwhelming response from experienced professionals, and this really tells me that there really is a need for this sort of content. So what I did was compile and synthesize, and I identified common themes and categorized all of the information to 7 broad discussion areas. I also included my own feedback as well. So my effort here is not to really generalize and say that this is applicable to all new professionals. I just want to share about the common themes that were identified. So to begin, I'd like to describe a general profile of new student affairs professionals as it relates to this topic. So new student affairs professionals really desire to have a significant impact in your work. You desire to deliver quality. You also hope to become a competent worker, right? And also have community amongst your peers and have that sense of belonging. And overall, you all just desire to have a positive experience in the workplace. I'll talk about the things you can actually do to achieve these desires and these goals. So while new professionals will share some similar broad goals, there are also common needs that are identified for this group. So new student affairs professionals want to be acknowledged for their work. New student affairs professionals also need feedback that's communicated not only early, but on an ongoing basis to really operate effectively in your work, or information to really let you know that you're on the right track in the things that you do in your efforts. And also, new student affairs professionals need encouragement in order to pursue your work with greater confidence. So here we are. Here's a listing of the broad categories I'll be covering. So number one states your role as a learner. We're going to be talking about your role as a learner. Also, number two, developing good work habits. Number three, your interactions with others. Number four, maintaining a sense of well-being. Number five, maintaining realistic expectations in the workplace. Number six, focusing on the bigger picture. And lastly, number seven, having the right mentality. So first and foremost, I encourage you all to learn, and learn some more. A problem that's been identified is that new professionals come in wanting to quote unquote change the world in a day. Now, another concern is that new professionals get wrapped up and spend a lot of valuable time worrying about what other professionals are doing instead of learning their job and doing it well. So what I want to encourage you all to do in learning your job is to take all the information in like a sponge. Take the first year to really absorb and learn and collect as much information as possible and actually apply it and get to know your role for what it is before you try to move it forward to what it could be. So focus on the work that you were hired to do and do it well. Then you'll be better positioned to quote unquote change the world, right? And understand that your career is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's a slow and steady process. You achieve small wins every single day. It's not something that's achieved instantly or immediately. It's not a sprint. And a sign that you've learned is that you feel comfortable with your job and things operate more fluidly and automatically in your work. Now let's talk about learning about politics and your institutional culture. So many new professionals come in with expectations that all others are on the same page as them in terms of like the way they view the world or the way they view work, and then they end up becoming frustrated. Another issue regarding this topic is that many professionals don't keep in mind the distinction between personal values and the code of ethics that you signed up for as an employee. And the code of ethics for the institution you work for, it always will supersede your values in that role. Now, your values, don't get me wrong, they are important. But as long as you are an employee of an institution, the ethical standards will always take precedence over your personal values. I want you to also learn and know the rules of engagement. Learn about the unwritten rules within your office, your department, your institution. Learn the dynamics and the environment and the climate at your university. Learn about the major players. Learn the system and why things are done in particular ways, and then you can add your creativity and consider new ideas. It helps you not to really step on toes and overstep any boundaries, and it helps you make more informed decisions. Now, this is also important in order to become better positioned to get heard and maintain trust in relationships, and also to have impact and navigate your contexts more effectively. The third bullet point talks about listening, observing, and seeking feedback. This all has to do with learning as well. Come into the workplace not thinking that you know it all, that you're a know-it-all. Don't think that you know everything that there is to know. I want you to listen to folks who have been in the field longer than you and learn about yourself, learn about your areas of growth by seeking feedback and constructive criticism, and take it in even when it's involuntary. I remember as a graduate student and even as a new professional, I hated when it came time for formal evaluations. I took them personally, I held a grudge, and I just didn't like them because I felt that I had worked so hard, and how dare someone criticize my style or, things that I've done in my efforts and how I can improve. So it was always difficult for me to experience that as a young new professional, but over time I've definitely matured. I've done a 180 in terms of my perspective about feedback. I love constructive criticism. I seek feedback because I'm fully invested in my own learning, my growth, and I know that others will be able to look from the outside in and give me feedback that will help me to learn and grow. So I encourage you all to not take evaluations personally. Many of them will come over time, And you should even seek them early and ongoing, even before the formal evaluations. Just be open to them. It's about your professional development and the bigger picture, the bigger purpose, and to ensure that you're on the right track. So just reshape your thinking about evaluations and know that, for example, you're the picture in a frame, right? So you can observe the picture. If you are the frame, you need someone from the outside looking in. So find value in that. And last but not least, lifelong learning. Many tend to stop seeking learning opportunities because they say they're working full time and they're too busy and they're burnt out from grad school. But yeah, it's nice to take a little break, but always have the mentality of being a lifelong learner. Seek opportunities to learn new skills, gain new knowledge, sharpen your talents, and to embrace some of your interests and just learn more about the field, learn more about students, and just be a lifelong learner. The second broad area, this has to do with developing good work habits. The first point is to do good work. I want to highlight the word good. Good simply means complete. So just do complete work. Oftentimes, people minimize the word good. And for me, good is a terrific state to be in. It means 100%. It means full. Now, of course, if there's space for more that doesn't really compromise your well-being, then do it. That's highly commendable. Getting to be 100% or doing good work is challenging enough. And the goal is to really maintain your well-being. However, of course, if there's space to do more, then do it. And part of doing good work includes acting with integrity or doing what you say you'll do, being consistent and owning up to your mistakes. To know you are acting with integrity is not about necessarily doing things right, which is an important work habit to develop. Rather, it's about doing the right thing. That is, your behaviors match the ethical standards of your institution. So all in all, do good work and act with integrity, especially if you are in the first 6 months of employment, which is the probationary period. The second point has to do with keeping organized. So in developing good work habits, this definitely involves maintaining organization. Part of keeping organization in your work, you have to manage your attention. You've heard it time and time again about time management, but I think it's much more about attention management. There are so many distractions on the internet, social media is a distraction, so we get kind of sidetracked and focus on other things that are trivial and not that important, but we have to learn how to manage our attention. Once we manage our attention, time management will follow suit. You also want to set a prioritized list, but know that there will always be a list. So don't stress yourself out or kill yourself once you've prioritized, once you've completed your day, and you find that you still have a lot of work to do. Know that even if you finished every task that you had set out to complete for a day, you're done, there will be more tasks to pile up the next morning. There will always be a list. So the best you can do is to prioritize that list and achieve what you can achieve in that day. For me, in terms of organization, my desk has always been a reflection of how in control I am of my time. If my desk has papers everywhere, things everywhere, I can't find stuff, I can't even see my desk because it's covered by so many things, that's an indication that I am overwhelmed, I'm disorganized. But if my desk is nice and neat and organized, that means I'm in control of my attention, I'm in control of my time, things are organized, I'm being productive. Let's talk about boundaries. So in terms of setting boundaries, here are some things to remember. You need to set a clear and prioritized schedule. You have to communicate it out and try to stick to it. However, if your tasks, of course, like we mentioned before, if it doesn't get done by the end of the day, all you have to do is develop a plan of action for the next day so that you can feel better about leaving the work for next time, okay? Instead of working these long hours, just feel good in your plan of action and try not to take work home. I know that's super hard to do, but you have to develop the discipline or the routine of avoiding work that you're doing at home. Your personal time is very valuable, and we're going to talk more about your personal time. Switching gears a bit in terms of boundaries, you likely have already started working with a staff, but to consider for a new staff of students, you can consider starting off more serious, to set a tone of accountability. Like when you first start working with your team, you want to start off more serious, right? Then later on, you can increase your flexibility. So this can be hard for some new student affairs professionals because commonly new professionals struggle to want to be liked by staff or liked by your students, and you start off too flexible and overly lenient. I definitely struggled with that. I wanted to be nice and cool and, flexible and all of that. And sometimes students can take advantage of you for that reason. You want to set the tone of accountability, and so that students and your staff can take you seriously, take their job seriously, and then there's always room for flexibility later on, but at least you've set that tone in the beginning. Another thing about boundaries is you don't want to hang out with your students. You probably have heard this many times. Students may sense favoritism if they see that you're hanging out with certain students and not them, and it could jeopardize the dynamic of your team. Now, of course, if you have team outings and staff outings or staff get-togethers and things like that, it's totally okay, right? Because you're doing it as a team. But if it's to say, okay, Saturday night, not doing anything, this has nothing to do with the job, but Susie, let's hang out. Susie is your student staff member. You probably want to rethink that. So overall, with setting boundaries, you have to set them early and often, and then you can adjust them as necessary. So let's talk about documenting. So many professionals make the mistake of relying on verbal communications or agreements and then don't remember what was said. What you want to make sure to do is to make it a habit to take notes so that you can recall details later on and recall information. And you want to even carry a notebook even when someone says, oh, we don't really need a notebook, it's just a quick little meeting. You want to take your notebook to meetings, and when there are verbal agreed upon actions, if it's not in an email or the calendar, then it doesn't exist. You have to write email confirmations of agreements. So in documenting conflicts or incidents that happen, right, remember to avoid descriptions of your personal emotions and sentiments, and also your own analysis of the incident. You want to avoid those things. But what you want to include are dates. You want to quantify. You want to include facts. You want to try to be as factual as possible and remove sentiment from documenting so that the facts can strictly be examined and people can take you more seriously. So just know with documenting incidents or things that happen to you, if you felt it, it's real, so you need to document it, right? Let's talk about communicating. Another good work habit is to cultivate effective communication. To offer you a few pointers, just be reminded that before asking follow-up questions in an email to someone that wrote you an email, be sure that you read previous emails to get details rather than having the person email you back and saying, quote unquote, as per my last email, ... That's an indication that, okay, I've already communicated this out to you. It was in my previous email, and here's the information again. You don't want to come off as that person that didn't read thoroughly or, didn't pay attention to what was written before, and you're asking the question again. So make sure you answer all the questions or reply to all of the inquiries that were sent in a message. It's so frustrating for me when I pose a few questions in an email and then in response, the person only answers like 2 questions and forgets that I asked like 3 others. So just read emails carefully and in detail and be sure to answer thoroughly. You are mindful of timely follow-up. I'm sure your team or your office constantly uses the word follow-up. Perhaps you do have an agreed upon time frame for following up with the different parties that you communicate with. So just be mindful of follow-up. It's important in communication. It's important in professionalism. And also, it's easier to say no first than change your response later than vice versa. For example, if someone requests that you join a committee and you find that you're so overwhelmed with work already, but you still say yes, and then later on you realize that you just don't have the time, and then you end up saying no. You want to avoid those kind of situations, right? It makes you appear as if you're disorganized or you're not really in control of your time and attention, but it's better to set those boundaries or to communicate and say, yeah, I'm a little overwhelmed at this point. Maybe I'll check in later about that. But for now, I'm not able to I'm not able to participate. That's something. It's better to start off saying no, and then you can change your response later. And also in communicating, you have to provide rationale to your staff members or to your colleagues to minimize resistance or pushback for something that you really want to employ or gain their buy-in about. So make sure you provide rationale and logic as to why you want to do something. That really helps to gain buy-in. And lastly, a good work habit to develop is to get involved. Make sure you share your talent, and what this does is help you feel more fulfilled in your professional experiences and helps you to build relationship currency. Now, relationship currency is what you gain through building relationships with others and networking and having those networks at hand when you need something in the future for a future opportunity, a position, whatever the case may be. So once you're involved, you give people an opportunity to see you work and to see your style and your performance and your personality and just get to know you, and you develop that trust and rapport, and that person could potentially have your back in the future. So being involved is super important professionally. Number 3 has to do with your interactions with others. The third area of discussion, interactions with the parties that you work with, including students and colleagues. So the first are your habits disclosing information to others. All right, let's talk about disclosing information to others. Just be careful with who you disclose or vent to. Be very careful and choose your battles wisely. Too many of them will arise, and for me, I select my quote-unquote battles based on the ones that, without addressing them, it might lead to the harm of others, or ones where there is a pattern of disservice or inappropriate actions, with pattern being the key word. And always be tactful in your interactions. Be diplomatic, be tactful, but stand up for what you believe is right. But it has to be aligned with the institutional code of ethics because, of course, as we talked about before, you are an employee of that institution, so you have to follow the code of ethics. Also, in your interactions with others, you want to be sure to monitor your nonverbal communication, your tone, because according to communication studies, nonverbal communications are just as powerful as verbal communications. Let's talk about confronting, and here I have listed carefronting. So that's confronting with care, and you're confronting because you want to maintain a positive relationship. You want to be on the same page with that person. You want to fix a situation because you care, right? So that's a positive spin on a word that's typically seen in a negative light. Nobody likes to confront. But when you do confront, it's really important that you do it in private. I have been to staff meetings where people decided to call someone out in front of the entire team and confront them about something that they forgot to do or didn't do, and it just creates a hostile environment. You want to avoid that and talk to the person in private, schedule a meeting, pull them aside where it's not obvious that you're talking, like make sure it's private to preserve that relationship. The next bullet point talks about having a developmental mindset. It's not easy dealing with the mistakes and the missteps of your students or your staff or your colleagues, but maintain a developmental mindset by treating those in your charge with kindness, help them grow, invest in them, show them empathy, and use their shortcomings as learning opportunities. So you just want to be patient and understanding, because there are several reasons why people may have certain responses that might be unfavorable or take actions that are mistakes. So just have that developmental mindset and think in terms of creating learning opportunities for people and having that positive regard for others. Next, I want to talk about cultivating inclusive spaces. So be careful not to create an exclusive environment, making things about quote unquote who you know in the workplace. So you want to avoid playing political games, and you want to be cognizant and careful with those that actually do this. And the time to navigate politics is actually when you're trying to promote inclusion and to grant access to all groups, not to be exclusive or to dominate power. In general, be inclusive, give voice, be fair. Show value. This allows all parties to function more confidently and make meaningful contributions. Now, when hearing the thoughts of others, I want you to be open to diverse views because your perspectives on things are not the only ones that exist or hold validity. So you want to avoid dominating conversations simply because you believe that you know more about a topic than others you work with. So you want to be open, you want to be a good listener, and be open to diverse viewpoints and thoughts. So in assuming goodwill, what I want you to remember is that if you're having trouble dealing with people you have issues with or you don't really get along with that well, there's often conflict, it's easy to just feel that they are out to get you or they're out to make your life miserable. But know that that may not necessarily be the case. As a matter of fact, it probably is not the case that their main purpose is to ruin your day. Just assume goodwill from everyone because people probably are not out there to get you or to make you have a terrible day or a terrible experience as a professional. As we spoke about before, we all hold diverse perspectives. We see things differently and we have diverse approaches to things. So sometimes that might lead to conflict, but communication is key, and just having a good mindset about that individual could actually help shape your interactions with them. So let's talk about group development and dynamics. I want you to remember the model of group formation, right, that we learned in graduate school, that many of us learned in graduate school, where there are 5 stages of group development: the forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Oftentimes, professionals want to throw in the towel or give up on their job or find that their job is just too much, they just can't handle it, only because there's conflict within their team or they're having a difficult time working with other people. I want you to remember that that second stage, the storming stage after you formed, is hard. It is a hard stage to be in. You're having conflict, you're not getting along, there's difficulty, and it's uncomfortable. But know that there are additional stages following that. There's an opportunity to reshape your expectations for one another and communicate that out. And then you could arrive at the performing stage where you're actually delivering effectively and working together effectively and positively. So there is hope there, and that's something I want you to remember. That storming, it's a natural phenomenon that takes place as long as you're working with others. We come from diverse backgrounds, diverse understandings, so things are not always going to match, but our job is to communicate and have hope that things will be better. The last piece of feedback for interacting with others is to always leave the workplace on good terms with the people there. What I mean by this is if you're leaving your job and you're maybe going to a new job or whatever the case may be, you don't want to leave on bad terms. You don't want to leave showing those individuals that you still have a grudge against them. You want to leave on a positive note. If that means sending thank you letters to everyone, especially those who you didn't get along with that well, or your supervisor, or different departments of people that you worked with, you have to do that. As a former RD, I remember someone who worked in the international office. She had a wonderful relationship with her colleagues, and another institution called her to come work for them. And she started that position. She was in it for a month. She hated it. And she asked to come back to her job that she left, and they welcomed her back. Why? Because she left on good terms. They liked her. They liked her work. And that was a really unique situation. And it's amazing how things like this work out. So just know, you just never know the situation. You never know who's going to be your future boss. You just never know what the situation may be. Your enemy may end up being in a high position at an institution that you desperately want to work for. So you want to maintain those positive relationships with everyone and leave on good terms. The fourth area of discussion is your well-being as a professional. The first point notes that it's really important for you to guard your personal time. Now, you can still make yourself accessible to your students, to your colleagues, but you have to protect your time in order to maintain your well-being. And also know that it's just simply okay to say no. It's really not about selfishness, it's about self-preservation. We hear this common assertion about being able to say no to things in order to set boundaries and to maintain your sense of well-being. So I'm sure this isn't so new, but just a friendly reminder that it's really important to be able to say no and not feel bad about it, and caring for yourself, you shouldn't feel guilty. And know that guilt, it only comes from doing something wrong. And there is nothing wrong, but everything right when caring for yourself. Also know that self-care is critical because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help anybody effectively if you're not doing well yourself. Also, establish the mentality of being okay with not doing everything in a single day. You're not a superhero, okay? Lots of people may praise you and say, man, you're a superhero, but just know that we are but mere humans. We make mistakes, we need our rest, and it's okay to not be able to do every single thing in a single day. In student affairs, you are charged with the responsibility of maintaining and juggling a lot of tasks. But the key there to your well being is to have the mentality of being okay with not achieving every single thing that you hoped to achieve in a single day. Know that success, it doesn't come from working overtime. I have to place real emphasis on that. People think that by working long hours and impeding upon your personal time, you'll be successful in achieving some of the results you want to achieve. But success really actually comes from small wins every single day towards an ultimate goal. So you have to care for yourself to even have the energy to continue succeeding the next day. So just know that, again, success doesn't come necessarily from working overtime. Also, be careful with how you use your time when you're working these long hours, as I mentioned, and using your personal time for work. You may not even feel these, like the immediate impact, but there certainly is a cumulative effect that is dangerous and it manifests later as burnout. And the thing with trying to be perfect and spending your personal time to do work is you actually run the risk of burning yourself out, as I did as a residence director. I worked all around the clock and on weekends just to ensure that things were perfect for my RAs. And I could have just simply communicated any holdups or delays or anything like that to my staff in order to care for myself and in order to avoid long hours to have everything ready in the morning. And while the RAs may have seen this as an advantage for them, I was doing damage to myself. And it's not really good modeling to show this kind of perfection to your students because they need to understand, again, that we are humans. We can't achieve everything in a single day or even in a single week. And the key is to simply communicate and to allow others to at least know what's going on and to know the status of certain endeavors. So all in all, avoid overworking yourself. And that's really the essence of maintaining your well-being in the workplace. Another part of tending to your well-being is to maintain those boundaries that we discussed. Boundaries are important to have your energy and to bring your best self to work. And you really need your wellness in order to work. We know that. And there's a lot more to life than work. There's a lot more to life than work. Also, with prioritizing, just remember, don't make second things first. Keep first things first. Prioritizing means placing important things first over perhaps urgent matters, if you will, because oftentimes we have a bad habit of placing things that we deem as urgent over things that are important. Also, have fun and pursue your hobbies. This is an important area to maintain your well-being as a professional. Do things that make you smile, do things that you love, that make you laugh, and pursue your hobbies. We each have areas of interest outside of work, so make sure you're tapping into those hobbies and doing things that you love because you're going to bring that happiness or that joy into the workplace, that sense of contentment. And research has shown that having this sense of contentment and happiness outside of work life can definitely impact your performance in a positive way. Also, establish a community of support. We need others in our lives to be happy. We need others to just feel a sense of joy and contentment and happiness. And we need others who support our endeavors and give us ideas and allow us to brainstorm with them or run through issues with them or talk about issues rather with them. And just that whole exchange can be very stimulating. So having a community of support with some trusted colleagues or even individuals outside of your workplace is really important to maintain your well-being. The fifth area of discussion has to do with maintaining realistic expectations in your work. So first, know that there's a lot of information for you to acquire over time, and it's really impossible to know everything. So don't feel this kind of sense of incompetence. There's always tomorrow. I'm placing real emphasis on the fact that there is always tomorrow. You can't have this unrealistic expectation of wanting to complete every single thing in a single day. I want to talk about your graduate school experience. Your graduate school experience, it cannot fully prepare you for full-time work. There definitely is a learning curve. So don't jump ship, right? Because you struggle with the work that you're doing and you feel like it's not a good fit for you. Just know that you will still have a whole lot of stuff to learn aside from the theories and the research and all of that. There's a lot of practical things that you need to be patient with yourself in learning, and graduate work cannot fully prepare you for full-time work. And coming in with that realistic expectation is really helpful. Also know that not everyone is going to be on the same page as you. It's easy to think so, especially coming out of the bubble of graduate school where this groupthink kind of starts to happen sometimes, not all the time. And you're learning the same material, the same theories and models, and following similar paradigms with your cohort. And you might exit graduate school and think that, well, I guess all student affairs professionals think this way, or you may not even give it thought. You probably just automatically assume subconsciously that you all are similar minded, and that's really not the case. So be mindful of that one as well. Another thing is to expect thankless days in your work as a full-time professional. Sometimes you won't receive the acknowledgement that you actually deserve because we lose sight and we get caught up in achieving tasks that we even forget to take care of one another. So what you can do to kind of address this concern is to establish a mentor, or again, that community of support that we spoke about, who can actually give you those affirmations that you need when the home base isn't really providing that or isn't able to provide that on a regular basis. Also expect to get discouraged and experience a lot of hurt. In student affairs, we like to paint the picture that student affairs is so positive and pleasant and awesome, and you get to grow students. But also know that there will be times when the social climate is really hostile and you have to navigate that with your students and address those matters within your campus, or whatever the case may be. There may be an issue on campus that you've tried your best and your response is not really resonating with the students, and so sometimes you will get discouraged and experience a lot of hurt. Things in student affairs are not roses all the time, not at all. So I think being a student affairs pro is one of the more difficult jobs in the world. That's my own bias. I own up to that, but the work that we do is very dynamic, very challenging. Whether individuals outside of student affairs want to acknowledge that or not, having that firsthand experience, I certainly know that it requires a lot of grit to be a student affairs professional, and days will not always be rosy. Hopefully your resilience will kick in and show up in the times that you really need it when it's not rosy. Also remember that the reward is not going to be monetary in the work that you do, but it's really in the opportunity to influence and change the lives of your students. That's the real reward. So, don't come in thinking that you're going to make a lot of money, but know that the real purpose, the real focus, and the real reward comes from transforming or influencing the lives of students in a positive way. The sixth area of discussion is to focus on the big picture. Oftentimes, new professionals really struggle to maintain the correct focus in their work. So what you should do is reconsider and keep your eyes on the purpose, or the quote-unquote why, as some would say, and the mission and just simply why you chose the work that you do. Okay. Also, don't forget students. Do not forget your students because it's easy to get caught up with other responsibilities that we're doing in student affairs, that we kind of take for granted that our students need our help and that they're there. It's just that they're not presenting us with all the tasks and deadlines and things of that sort, unless you're an advisor, right, of a student organization. But just know that we ought to not forget our students and lock ourselves in the office because we have to get urgent tasks done. And it's also important to just remember how hard college can be for students. The more years go by after finishing college, the harder it can be to really remember how difficult college is for students. So being able to apply that empathy and placing yourself in the shoes of students when you may notice that they're acting in a certain undesirable way or manifesting some other issues going on. Just remember how hard college can be in your role as an advisor, as an administrator, as a counselor, whatever your role is to be there to support your students developmentally. So having that level of empathy is really key in maintaining a focus on the bigger picture. And the seventh and final area of discussion really involves maintaining the right mentality as you pursue your profession. Sometimes, it's easy to believe that in the workplace that someone you're having issues with is out to give you a hard time, right? And just know that that may not necessarily be the case. And it's best to assume goodwill from others because people are likely not trying to ruin your day. So this has to do with workplace conflict or anything like that. Just remember that we come from diverse backgrounds with different approaches. So disagreements may arise, but just assume others are not out to get you. This is a highly unhelpful mentality to maintain if you're thinking that someone is always out to give you a hard time. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Another issue is that many student affairs professionals spend a lot of time feeling sad about their imperfections. I've noticed that a lot. And just know that, of course, it is okay to be imperfect. Remember, as human beings, we are all inherently flawed. We have to, though, in the process, confidently make mistakes. We cannot beat ourselves up over, our shortcomings. All we have to do is fix it, learn from it, then move forward. I want to say that again. It's just really about fixing it, learning, and then just moving forward. And then this issue quickly becomes irrelevant and a thing of the past, and it doesn't define you. So just be okay with your imperfections and make mistakes because mistakes help you to learn. You don't do them on purpose, but if you make a mistake, be confident about it because you know in your mind that everyone makes mistakes, but it's all about your approach and what you're going to do with that mistake and learn from it and be better, and then it becomes a thing of the past. I want you to also remember, in these times of discouragement or anxiety about your performance or anything like that, remember that you were hired for a reason when you experience things like imposter syndrome. And just know that you certainly are enough. You are enough. You were hired for a reason. And to explain imposter syndrome, that's when high achieving individuals like yourself have this overwhelming fear or anxiety about not deserving to be in a space or not belonging within a space or not having the competencies needed to perform effectively and things like that. Just always remember that you were hired for a reason. You are enough. You do qualify and you have merited the right to be in the space that you are in, and you are valid. You have lived experiences that shape your perspectives just like everyone else, and it matters. And never forget that. And I want to remind you also that you should never forget who you are and lose your authentic self in the process for anyone. Okay, I know there will be people that you look up to, there's the competition, there's those that you may deem as socially acceptable within the environment and you desire the same, but make sure you always explore who you are, remember who you are, and be true to that, because that's when you're able to really thrive and be different and apply creativity in a very positive way. Don't lose yourself in the process. Maintain your authentic self. Your qualities, your personality, your passions, your interests, all of those things are valuable. Another point that I want to drive home is remembering that nothing in life is ever, quote unquote, that serious. That's a piece of advice that I once heard a mentor share with me. Like, stop taking things so seriously. Nothing in life, even the things that are extremely serious according to society, nothing ever ends up being that serious. If there's not imminent danger present or, harm to self, like, we have to try to understand that there's a solution for most things. And if not all things, there's a solution to most things, and it will be a-okay. You just apply the appropriate effort to rectify the situation, and you move forward. And if things don't work out in the process, guess what? That was a learning opportunity for you, and there's always an opportunity for tomorrow, and always an opportunity to improve. There's too much in life to be concerned about that we have to figure out a way to shape our mentality to understand that there's nothing that is ever that serious. That doesn't mean that you become lazy or you don't do things to make sure it's of quality. You always want to do good work, but you do your best and you're okay with the result because you know that you've done your best and you know that there's always tomorrow. Similar to this point, I want you to remember that you shouldn't stress out about things that are out of your control. I see so many professionals do this, that they worry and complain or are fearful about things that are outside of their own control. All you have to do is really develop a plan of action within your own sphere of influence and be content with what you were able to do. To continue this focus on mentality, I want to guide you in a quick exercise to help you begin the practice of preserving constructive thinking habits, okay? As new professionals, you may be dealing with a whole lot of anxieties, but I want to give you a chance to start redirecting that worried focus to one that's more favorable, okay? So if you have an obstacle that kind of feels insurmountable, this is a quick and easy way to really turn it around. So I want you to take an index card or a small piece of paper, and I'll give you a moment to maybe identify one. And what I want you to do is to write the obstacle you're facing on one side, and then I want you to then flip it over and write the opposite. So here's an example. So if you're saying, and this is my example, this is something that I've written for myself. If you're saying, I'm not that good of a speaker, or I'm not that good at speaking, on the opposite side, you would write, I am a good speaker. Now, you write this even if it doesn't seem reasonable or true, okay? So I'll give you a few seconds to really think about that for yourself. This exercise, what it does is it tricks your brain into seeing possibilities. We go out and we tell people about our limits and our problems and we dwell on them. People sympathize and they say, me too, I know what that's like. But if you actually flip the card and start talking about possibilities, people will give you suggestions and your brain will come up with new ideas and so on and so forth. So place this card on your mirror or on your cork board to see it daily so that particular possibility, that focus is front and center. So when you're faced with any other obstacle, you may need to flip the card and see the possibilities, right? So the creator of this exercise says that she's seen this time and time again where people actually carry out their possibilities as a result of the focus they've gained from this really simple exercise. One thing to know is that things aren't real until you write them down. That's what we teach to students about goals, for example. You write your goals down so that you can see them, meditate on them, focus on them, be aware of them. The same applies here. Your possibility becomes more realistic once you write it and you focus on it. And I've done this for myself, and I definitely see the benefits of it, that I'm constantly reminded that I am a good speaker, and my brain does focus on the fact that I am a good speaker, and I continue to believe that, and it allows me to perform better. Now that we've gone over some feedback and insights to improve your experiences as new professionals in student affairs, this is an opportunity to really develop or define your own action steps that you're eager to employ in your own work. We've reached a point where I want to share some closing points. And really quick random piece of information is about your student loans. As full-time professionals, Sally Mae or Navient or whoever your student loan provider was will start knocking at the door and sending you mails and emails and things of that sort, because it's now time to start thinking about repaying your student loans. And think about repaying those loans now and sign up for a plan to start making those smaller payments or larger payments or regular payments, however you designate that for yourself. But my goal for you is to avoid having too much interest pile up, because that's been my experience and that's something I'm currently navigating. But it's really critical to give them a call and set up a plan now that you are a full-time professional to go ahead and tackle that student loan and get it out of the way. Financial freedom is really one of our goals as adults, right? So what we covered today, you may or you may not have heard these things during your training or for one of your HR new employment orientations. This is advice that a mentor, a sponsor, a supervisor, or your peers would give you over time, but you received it conveniently all at once. Much of this information may not have been so brand new, while some may be brand new things to think more deeply about, but this definitely serves as good reiteration and reminders of how critical this feedback is to your success as a new student affairs professional. Now, one thing I know is that people learn by trial and error, and most of what you learn, you'll probably do it the hard way, and that's just reality. And we may have learned the information, but end up doing the opposite sometimes. And sometimes things don't really resonate until we actually experience it. But what I encourage you to do is to save the hassles of experimentation and start applying this critical feedback to your work that you've gained today. Overall, I hope you enjoy your position and just simply make the most of it. So this is my contact information. Again, my name is Dr. Ejama Nwogu. I've included my Twitter hashtag. I would love to connect with you. My email address is ejama@everlead.info if you would love to connect with me. And feel free to check out my website, everlead.info, for more information about how I might serve you, your institution, or your students. So make sure you connect with me. It's been a pleasure delivering this awesome critical message to new student affairs professionals. I hope you have a wonderful experience, and I hope you share this information with your colleagues, with your friends, or whoever the relevant parties may be. Again, signing off, thank you for your attention. Wishing you the best of luck.